Granny is the fan favourite elder stateswoman of the Looney Tunes gang. First emerging officially in 1950, Granny had a surprisingly long proto-evolution dating back to the late 1930s, growing into a staple of the Tweety and Sylvester cartoons, and later a beloved regular of the grander franchise. Now, Granny celebrates 75 years, and to celebrate, I will trace her evolution from 1950 to now. To do so, we will look at her entire history, touching on her earliest proto-appearances and her numerous depictions seen across almost 8 decades of shorts, series, feature films, and select extended media. In this edition of Cartoon Evolution. The mid-1940s saw the emergence of a new wave of Looney Tunes characters, as the studio aimed to bulk up their cast roster following a popularity surge during World War II, with the studio's zany, rambunctious, and hyper-violent offerings appealing widely to audiences in a war-torn world. Sylvester and Tweety emerged as a fan-favourite duo, following their first pairing in 1947's Academy Award-winning cartoon Tweety Pie, directed by Friz Freleng. Sylvester and Tweety had flourished separately for a near decade before being paired by Freleng, with various iterations of the characters appearing in Warner cartoons. Together, however, they fit perfectly, depicted as a pair of house pets constantly at war with each other. Tweety was calm and cute, albeit with a violent manic streak, while Sylvester was erratic and cunning, but ultimately dim-witted. Though small and sweet, Tweety always outwitted and outplayed Sylvester. Ignorantly egotistical, Sylvester showed that he was determined to capture and potentially kill the bird at all costs. A third pet, Hector the Bulldog, also quickly joined the fight, often acting as a foil for Sylvester's schemes. By 1950, Sylvester and Tweety had solidified themselves as a staple of Warner's character roster, and following 5 cartoons, animators decided it was time to add an extra player to their game. It was only natural to introduce Tweety's owner, the elderly Granny. Much like with the bird and the cat, the studio had toyed around with introducing a grandma character for several years. 1937's Little Red Walking Hood features a feisty grandma ripped directly from the Little Red Riding Hood fairy tale. Despite being dithery and extremely old, this grandma is full of energy, easily outrunning and outsmarting the big bad wolf. 1941's The Cagey Canary, an early Sylvester and Tweety proto-tune, features a cranky older woman named Mama as the owner of a little yellow canary and a grey tomcat. Here, the grandma defends the canary from that old cat, even getting a frightening burst of energy and intervening on their fight. She does, however, grow tired of both animals, kicking them out into the rain. In 1943's Hiss and Make Up, another older woman is seen as the owner of a yellow canary, a cat, and a dog. This time round, she aims to put an end to the incessant fighting between the cat and the dog, coming to the defense of the bird when he gets caught up in the brawl. And in 1944's Hair Force, the same woman appears as the owner of Sylvester the dog, coming to the aid of the trickster Bugs Bunny, who falls his way into their warm home on a snowy winter's evening. After a quick battle of the wits, it's the woman who finds herself out in the cold. Likely taking inspiration from these earlier shorts, animators introduced Granny in Sylvester and Tweety's 6th dual appearance, 1950's Canary Row. Here, Tweety is a housebird bound to an apartment building window, while Sylvester makes numerous attempts to scale the building to catch him. Granny acts as an unwitting foil against him. Here, Granny takes on her iconic appearance from day one, an elderly but sprightly woman with a long blue dress, grey hair, and spectacles, taking elements from the various proto-grannies. Here, Granny was voiced by B. Benaderet, who had portrayed the elderly woman in Hiss and Make Up and Hair Force. Benaderet would perform the character in the cartoons for the next 5 years. Granny also made her way into extended media in her debut year, appearing on 1950's Looney Tunes record Tweety Pie. Instead of Benaderet, however, June Foray voiced the character, also appearing on a number of other LPs over the following years. Granny next appeared in 1951 cartoon Room and Bird, making only a brief appearance. However, in that year's Tweety's SOS, she'd take one of the lead roles. Set on a cruise liner, Tweety is again tormented by Sylvester, now a hungry alley cat. For the first time, Granny joins the fight, warding Sylvester off with her ferocious attitude, energetically chasing him around and beating him off with her umbrella. Audiences loved Granny, and she immediately took a regularly recurring role in the Tweety and Sylvester cartoons. And while she didn't appear in every single one, in 1953 alone she featured in 4 out of 5 of them. Granny became Sylvester's main foil, continually keeping him away from her beloved canary, and often serving her own fierce defense against him. She was also occasionally seen as the owner of Sylvester too. Introducing Granny to the cartoons added a human element lacking from many of the Looney Tunes series, helping add some madcap comedic dialogue and exposition. Though many think of the classic Sylvester, Tweety and Granny formula as being confined to a house, there were very few cartoons that took that setting, with the early tunes featuring such other locations as an old barn on a farm, a holiday cabin in the woods, and the beach. One was even a period piece set in the Old West. In 1953, Granny starred in Hair Trimmed, where she was featured alongside Bugs Bunny and Yosemite Sam in her first appearance outside of the Tweety and Sylvester cartoons. In this short, Granny is a rich, elderly widow targeted by Sam, who has hatched a plan to marry her and steal her money. However, Bugs poses as a rival suitor to foil his wretched scheme. Granny, none the wiser, is thrilled to have 2 admirers, and hysterically pits them against each other. This cartoon is also notable for revealing Granny's name to be Emma. By 1955, Granny had appeared in 11 cartoons and was about to undergo 2 major changes. In 1955's This Is a Life, she starred in her second non-Sylvester and Tweety cartoon, where she appeared in the audience of a live television recording alongside Bugs and Daffy Duck. The cartoon notably marked the first in which June Foray voiced Granny on screen, becoming her main voice actor until 2013. The second major change took effect as of 1955's Red Riding Hoodwinked, in which her design changed drastically. In this cartoon, Granny is unrecognisable, with a slightly shorter, curvier body and boxy head. For the remainder of the classic era cartoons, Granny's design never reverted. However, her head did gradually round out again, despite now being too big for her body, which got even smaller. Over time, her elderliness and feisty attitude were toned down, and she became an overall more comedic, cartoony character in both design and personality. Classic Granny did appear once more in 1959's Tweet Dreams, which featured flashback sequences utilising clips from early cartoons. The post-55 cartoons continued to follow the tradition of seeing the gang off on world-hopping adventures, with Granny travelling to Italy, enjoying a beach holiday in Hawaii, and taking a globe-trotting cruise right across Europe and Asia. In other cartoons, a new formula was also introduced, which saw Granny taking on numerous different professions. After the middle 50s, Granny's appearances began to dwindle, starring in only 5 1960s cartoons. 1964's Hawaiian Ai marked her final appearance in a Tweety and Sylvester short. In fact, this was Sylvester and Tweety's final classic cartoon together, as the Warner Animation Studio was shuttered later that year due to a declining interest in theatrical cartoons. Warner's did, however, outsource their animation to DePatie Freeling Enterprises, headed by Freeling and producer David H. DePatie. Though most of the tunes were retired under their leadership, Granny made one final appearance in 1965's Corn on the Cob, alongside Daffy and Porky Pig. Here, Granny appeared in a design that was somewhat of a meld between her 2 earlier versions, and due to the limited nature of the DePatie Freeling cartoons, she appeared in a somewhat more angular, rigid design. This cartoon is also notable for revealing Granny's surname.
Don't worry, Mrs. Webster, I'll take care of this one.
In all, Granny appeared in 25 classic cartoons, 22 of which were alongside Sylvester and Tweety. Despite regularly appearing on television's The Bugs Bunny Show throughout the 1960s, this was only in repackaged theatrical cartoons, never appearing in any of the newly animated linking segments or even in the opening sequence. In fact, Granny didn't appear in any new animation for much of the 1970s. In the interim, she did continue to appear on Looney Tunes records, notably in several early 70s LPs, where she was voiced by the legendary Mel Blanc. Granny's next on-screen role was in 1977's Bugs Bunny's Easter Special, her first newly animated appearance in 12 years. Here, Granny appeared in her original design, playing a significant role in the linking segments alongside Bugs. Here they try to find a replacement Easter Bunny after he falls ill before the holiday. She also appeared in Bugs Bunny's Valentine's Special in 1979, but only in a repackaged classic cartoon. Granny also appeared in several of the era's theatrical package features in new animation. In 1981's Looney Bugs Bunny movie, she appeared in her original design alongside Tweety, Sylvester and Daffy at the Oswald Animation Awards hosted by Bugs. In 1983, she appeared in Daffy Duck's Fantastic Island as one of the stranded toons on Daffy's Island. Here she appeared to resemble her late 50s design. In both movies, she also appeared in repurposed classic cartoons, as she did in 1982's Bugs Bunny's third movie, 1001 Rabbit Tales. In the 1990s and early 2000s, Granny regularly appeared on many Looney Tunes series, predominantly in her original design. In 1990's Tiny Toon Adventures, she was depicted as a teacher at Acme University, tutoring computer animation. In a 1993 episode of Animaniacs, she also made a brief cameo in a cafeteria. In 1995, she made her most prominent appearance ever in the Sylvester and Tweety Mysteries. Designed as a noir-inspired murder mystery serial, the series saw Sylvester, Tweety, Granny and Hector solving mysteries through their own detective agency. Granny is depicted as the owner of the three animals as they go on globe-trotting adventures inspired by the classic tunes. The series ran for 52 22-minute episodes across 5 seasons between 1995 and 2000, though the final 2 went unaired until 2002. In 2000's spin-off movie Tweety's High-Flying Adventure, Granny once again appeared alongside Tweety and Sylvester. In 1996 feature film Space Jam, Granny was depicted as the cheerleader of the Toon Squad, again in somewhat of a hybrid of her two designs. While she is bound to the sidelines, she was part of several of the film's classic gags. In this period, Granny also made numerous appearances in a series of popular Looney Tunes video games, most notably 1993's Sylvester and Tweety in Cagey Capers, in which she appeared as the villain in numerous levels, and 2000's Bugs Bunny and Taz Time Busters, where she took the role of Timekeeper. In fact, the game kicks off when Daffy breaks Granny's time regulator. In the Looney Tunes webtoons, which ran between 2001 and 2005, Granny made a dozen cameo appearances, most notably in the Survivor parody Toon Marooned series, in which she's voted off in the second episode. She also starred in a number of webtoons, including the 3-episode Judge Granny series, a Judge Judy spoof pitting various toon rivalries against each other in Granny's court, Tear Factor, a Fear Factor takeoff hosted by her as she attempts to make various toons cry, and 2 mini Sylvester and Tweety cartoons, Little Pet Shop of Horrors, and the Bermuda Short episode of Mysterious Phenomena of the Unexplained. In Baby Looney Tunes, which ran between 2002 and 2005, Granny was once again a regularly recurring character. Here she was the elderly caregiver of the babyfied Looney Tunes. She is often the wise voice of reason, teaching the tunes lessons and helping them overcome problems. The series also introduced 2 members of her extended family, her sister, named Auntie, and her nephew, Floyd Minton, both of whom made numerous appearances. In a 2006 episode of Lunar lunatics unleashed, Granny's futuristic descendant, Queen Granicus, appears. Unlike Granny, Granicus is a villain with a role reversal. She teams up with the evil Sylvester to keep the royal Tweetums away from the throne. Granny herself appears in another episode. Granny also featured in two 2000s Looney Tunes movies. In 2003's Looney Tunes Back in Action, she appeared as the neighbour of Brendan Fraser's DJ. At the film's climax, it's revealed she's actually the Acme chairman in disguise, played by Steve Martin. And in 2006 direct-to-video movie Bah Humduck, A Looney Tunes Christmas, a Looney Tunes spoof of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, she appears in the role of the Ghost of Christmas Past. In 2011, Granny appeared in I Taught a Putty Tat, one of the Looney Tunes revival shorts, produced to capitalise on the then new 3D fad. Attached to Happy Feet 2 in theatres, the cartoon not only marked the first theatrical short starring Sylvester, Tweety and Granny in almost 50 years, but also their first ever appearances in computer animation and 3D. The short used archive recordings of June Foray for Granny's vocal performance. In Looney Tunes show running between 2011 and 2014, Granny appeared in a stylized angular design based on her original form. In the show, an animated sitcom which sees the Tunes as suburban animals, she appears as the elderly neighbour of Bugs and Daffy. The series is most notable for giving Granny a beloved backstory, with an episode revealing her to have been a spy in the Women's Army Corps during World War II, and Tweety her carrier canary. The episode features an exciting sequence where Granny, aka Emma Webster, flees from the Germans atop the Eiffel Tower. In New Looney Tunes, originally called Wabbit, which ran between 2015 and 2020, Granny continued to make regular appearances, now in a stylized version of her 1950s design. In the show, a zany series of screwball shorts, Granny essentially fulfilled her role from the original cartoons as the owner of Tweety. Following the passing of June Foray, Candy Milo took over the role of Granny for major projects going forward. Similarly, Granny made numerous appearances in Looney Tunes cartoons, which ran between 2020 and 2024. Heavily inspired by classic Looney Tunes cartoons, Granny appears alongside Tweety and Sylvester in several new cartoon shorts. Here, her appearance is somewhat of a blend between her two classic designs, retaining the body shape of the original and the rounder head and smaller statue of her 50s look. In 2021's Space Jam sequel, A New Legacy, Granny was promoted to member of the Toon Squad basketball team. Here she is seen in both 2D and 3D designs and is depicted as an incredibly spry, nimble and energetic old woman. She features in many of the movie's great gags, though one notable sequence sees her in a Matrix parody alongside Speedy Gonzales. Granny also featured in 2022 direct-to-video movie King Tweety, where she's depicted in a similar personality. A hip and cool elderly woman with plenty of pep and energy. This time she appears in a modern, stylized version of her original design. In 2022's preschool series Bugs Bunny Builders, she made a brief cameo in a Season 1 episode, appearing on a mural in the art studio of Daffy's artsy cousin Billy. She appears alongside classic Looney villains Yosemite Sam and Rocky. More predominantly, she's a regular supporting character on the Tiny Toon Adventures reboot Tiny Toons Looniversity, airing since 2023. Here she's known as Dean Granny and acts as the Dean of Acme Looniversity. She's depicted in her original design with her classic hard-edged, no-nonsense personality. In the world of games, Granny continues to appear in the Looney Tunes World of Mayhem mobile RPG. She can be found in many variants including Climber Granny, Cowgirl Granny, Evil Granny, Handmaiden Granny, Scout Leader Granny, Settler Granny, Space Explorer Granny, and Zombie Granny. As one of the few human Looney Tunes, Granny continues to be an important addition to Warner's character roster, and shows that she's still got a whole lot of life left in her. At that, I want to know your favourite Granny appearance or cartoon. As always, join the conversation down below.